Okay, welcome to another Full Access Friday. Appreciate you being with me. Glad to have Bob with us again. So, Bob, great to have you back. I know that you've had quite a long journey the last 17, 18 days. So, really happy to have you back, being able to listen to the Full Access show. And we're all praying that you stay out of the hospital and that your health continues to get better and improve.
Thank
Um,
you. I appreciate that.
sure, no problem. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was um, the fact that just the other day I mentioned that we need to put a pressure campaign out there on the William Young is his name, the Butler County medical examiner in Allegheny County and all that. And so I put out this campaign and I had people contact through email, through the phone numbers, through whatever. And even though I'm censored, I'm still able to get out there to a certain degree, even though I'm censored. And if I wasn't censored, yeah, this would have been even bigger. But I just want people to know that the pressure campaign does work. It is working and it has worked in the past. And the Allegheny County medical examiner has come out forcefully and said that they are pushing back against requests to release Thomas Crooks's autopsy records. Okay. Now, this was from today. We just did the campaign starting yesterday. So the reason I'm reading it is because I want people to understand that you may think that it's an uphill battle. You may think that you don't have a say or that no one's listening, but they are. They clearly are. Allegheny County Medical Examiner lab director is pushing back against a reporter's repeated requests as well as an online campaign to obtain Thomas Crooks's autopsy records. So I'm not sitting here and saying that I'm the only one. There's been people in the media, there's been journalists that have requested FOIA requests and things like that. But it's interesting that they also mentioned an online campaign. So that's why I wanted to start with that because it is important to know that when you do have these pressure campaigns, they can be successful. So the next thing I want to talk about is RFK Jr. All right. I just got back from the Trump rally. It was electric. It was completely filled. Okay. Nothing that Heels Up Headboard Harris could even imagine doing. Okay. Everything was filled, completely filled. And we're talking everywhere too, not just, where the top isn't full or anything. No, not at all. It was completely full. I'm going to do this live right now because why the hell not? So that's him and Bobby. But let me see here. Here it is. Right here. Look at the crowd. Keep your heart out. Heels up, Edward Harris. Look at that. All the way through, top to bottom, completely full. And there was thousands outside that didn't get in. So that's something that Harris and her weirdo tampon loving freak could never do. Okay. So let's start with the fact that we now know that RFK Jr. has left the
Hi,
race.
Gail.
Um, I believe he still might be on 10 ballots. He was on 22 ballots. He's now still on 10. I'm not sure those states yet. I'll try to find out. But I want to kind of go through and talk to everybody and kind of get your feeling on what you think here as far as this is concerned. Now, the first thing that I'll say is that one of the things that they talked about on stage was the fact that they want to dedicate more resources when he's president to childhood obesity, to obesity in general, to cleaning up our food supply, removing the chemicals from our water and our air and everything else. So there was an environmental tilt to what they were discussing, which is totally fine. There's no problem with that. But also vaccines, autism, some other things as well. Because remember, Bobby's been heavy into the anti-vaccine, industry, and going after the FDA and all these others and things like that. He's been at the forefront of that for a very long time. So he brought him up on stage and they talked a little bit about that. And it was an interesting thing because he was so welcomed from the crowd. They were all screaming, Bobby, Bobby, and they were yelling for him. So it's interesting that the two of them, again, one's a liberal, one's a conservative, right, or populist, whatever, and they're kind of now working together. So I want to start with you, Glenn, because obviously you're probably the first one in. Do you think that this is a net positive? Do you think it's going to be somewhere in the middle, or do you think it's going to hurt Trump in the end?
I think it's going to help Trump because of, his followers, and the way that I feel is a lot of the Republicans were following Bobby, and because they really don't care for Trump. And so now that he is going that way, they're gonna I believe they're gonna follow along with that and then cast their vote for Trump. I don't think that they don't there ain't no way that Kamala, no, or whatever her name is, I don't think that a lot of them are going to go her way.
Right.
Oh,
Gotcha.
or
Okay.
stay home.
Okay.
Oh.
What about you, Bob? Let's get to you next. So we now know that Trump has been endorsed by Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and we should start seeing the benefits of that, right? As far as polling and things like that. But in the end, do you think it's going to be a net positive right there in the middle or a net negative? What are your thoughts?
I think it's going to be a net positive for Trump. Like I was saying, a lot of Republicans were listening to Bobby and wanting to kind of like see whether or not Trump was going to fall that a little bit. But I think it's going to be a positive to Trump. But man, I would have loved to have been the fly on the wall in that meeting between those two guys. It's like what was said to convince him, or did he really even need convincing to join Trump? I think Kamala, when he announced that he was going to support Trump, I think it was a big wake up call to her, or slap in the face. Not a wake up call, but a slap in the face, because he's, although he doesn't have the following, the name still has the pull. I think, and like you say, a lot of people don't like Trump. A lot of people don't like her. But I mean, Trump is stacking up the endorsements from people that are, important people. And I think this one here is a definite positive for him.
Gotcha. Well, here's what I was thinking on that is that it's interesting that they're now getting together, but in some respects, they are just as afraid. And when I say they, I mean RFK Jr. and Nicole Shanahan. They're just as afraid as anyone else of, God forbid, having Harris, take over and continue the reign of terror on this country. And so they kind of saw it as, well, if we all kind of get together, then we can stop that. We can keep it from happening. The only thing that I keep going back to, and I'm not sure if Walter's in here yet. No, he's not. But one of the things that I keep going back to is the GOP, the RNC, the Trump campaign, MAGA, for America First candidates. Nobody has filed one lawsuit against RFK Jr. to try to keep him from the ballot. But yet, somehow, they say that it hurts Trump. It doesn't hurt Trump. And the reason you know that is because the DNC has spent millions upon millions of dollars in lawfare. They have spent so much in the Senate funds and the House funds and all that, whatever they could do to try to stop him from being on the ballot. So they know that their own internal numbers show that with him on the ballot, it obviously is hurting them. So my thought was, why would you remove the person that's hurting them from the ballot? Now you can look at it another way. these people that were supporting RFK Jr., let's say that the real numbers were 8, 9, 10%. Okay. The polling didn't show him that high. It showed him like 4 or 5%, right? 6%. But let's just say it was 7 or 8%. Let's just say, for argument's sake, it's 8%. Let's say 1 to 2% of those are like, I hate Trump. I, really didn't like Kamala Harris, but I would have voted for Bobby if he was there. So I guess I'll hold my nose and I'll vote for Kamala Harris. I believe that 1.5 to 2% of his following is going to actually vote for Harris. The flip side of that is, will the other 5 or even 6% say, okay, I will never vote for Harris. I'm not a huge fan of Trump. I don't have Bobby anymore, but I think I'll support Trump because Bobby supports Trump, right? So that's where I think it can be a net positive. But again, I still keep going back to the fact that they did everything they could to try to keep him off of the ballot. So, Carl, what do you think on this one? Do you think this is a net positive? Is it going to be neutral, or in the end it'll be a net negative? We can't hear you, bud. You got to unmute.
I keep forgetting that.
Yes.
Honestly, it seems like the people that were at that rally, if they're yelling Bobby, Bobby, I would say it's gonna help Trump.
Okay. So you think it'll help too. All right. Gotcha. What about you, Pam? Do you think that this is going to be a big positive for Trump? Do you think we're going to see it almost immediately in the next 2 to 3 weeks, let's say, in the polling?
Yes, I think so. The Democrats did everything they could to hurt Bobby Kennedy. They didn't give him any security. And New York State wouldn't even let him be on the ballot. I mean, how do you treat people like this? The Kennedys, I mean, they're the Camelot. It was
exactly
the number one political family. Democrats, the world is turning upside down. It's hell freezing over is what it is.
It is.
So,
You're right.
I have a friend that I email and send things back and forth. And I know she was for Kennedy, but she's very health minded and she's into eating healthy and to healthy things and no vaccines. So I'm thinking, she's probably horribly disappointed. But if she thought that maybe Kennedy would get to do some of his programs and to keep these healthy programs and hold, stand up to these horrible vaccines, the mandates, then she might vote Trump. But I don't know. I mean, she probably was a Democrat and then, loved Kennedy. And now she's probably disappointed.
Yeah. Well, you're right. And you know what? This is his way of not only helping save America, but it's also his way of getting revenge against the party that did this to him. Because, be careful what you wish for. You pushed him to be an independent and he did pretty well. And the thing is if he was allowed to be in the Democrat primary, he might have won the nomination. He might have. I'm not saying he would have, but I'm saying he would have. It wouldn't have been over immediately. I can guarantee you that. It would be down to him and Joe or whatever, towards the very, very end. It'd be a real close battle. That's for sure. Because a lot of people do support him. A lot of people do like him. So that's another thing. Be careful what you wish for, Democrats. You just pushed him out. You wouldn't let him out. You wouldn't let him play. You wouldn't let him speak. You wouldn't let him debate. You wouldn't let him do anything. And I believe he's on a revenge tour to go after them, mainly because of that. What about you, Gail? What are your thoughts here on this one? Do you think this is going to be a net positive for Trump? Do you think it'll be kind of somewhere in the middle or a negative?
It might be either the middle or a little bit of a positive for him. I did like the fact that he went to Hawaii. Now, the Democrats trashed that Maui, and he went over there to try to help those people. So that I like that, and I think maybe they can bring that out on. And if he sticks to just having generalized health and not playing with our food supplies and the CIA, he sticks to that nook, it'll probably work out well. Maybe.
Gotcha. Yeah, look, I'm hoping that we see immediate results in the next 2 to 3 weeks because it usually takes about that much time to kind of get an idea. And remember, the only polling that really matters is obviously on November 5th. But if you want to get a kind of a gauge that is at least somewhat accurate, it would be Rasmussen. Rasmussen has usually been pretty solid throughout the years. Liam, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it. So we're talking about the endorsement of RFK Jr. to President Trump. He has now officially dropped out and has endorsed President Trump. And we're trying to figure out from everybody, do you think this is going to be a net positive? Is it going to be somewhere in the middle, or is it going to be a negative? What are your thoughts?
Carol?
Well, Josh, it's a pleasure to be on here. That question's a curveball because it's like I didn't expect it to happen. I mean, I know your headline on the show said please don't drop out RFK, but he's done it. So number one, we're not going to have the splitting of the vote. So
Right.
you're supporting the president. It's like, why would you stop the splitting of the votes? But then at the same time, it's like he's being honest. He's going in with his support, and maybe he might happen to draw those in the middle folks. We would just hope Jill Stein is popular with the extreme leftists to take those votes away from Kamala. But I'm gonna say lean towards the positive. It's a step in the right direction. We know RFK isn't perfect, but we got less than 3 months before the election, and I'm looking forward to seeing what happens.
Yeah, I think we all are. I look at it from a couple different standpoints too. And as I said before, the only ones that are suing to keep him off the ballots are not Republicans, they're Democrats. So obviously, that the truth is that it hurts the Democrats much more than it hurts Republicans. So this whole line about he was hurting Trump is just total garbage. So my thought was, okay, if he legitimately, and I mean legitimately, picks up another 5-6% minimum by having RFK Jr. endorse him and then step out, maybe that's the extra 5 or 6% needed to kind of help compensate for the fraud attempts. You could look at it that way too. But let's find out from Carol here. Carol, what are your thoughts? We're talking about the endorsement of RFK Jr. to President Trump, and we're trying to figure out, in the long run, is this going to be a net positive? Is it going to be somewhere in the middle, or is it going to be a net negative? What are your thoughts?
I'm not sure, but I think that maybe it'll be positive, that some people that was maybe going to vote for him will just go ahead and vote for Trump, because I mean, really, any of those other parties, they never get enough votes. So it's just a waste of your vote, really. So
That's a
I'm
good
hoping
point.
those people will just go ahead and vote for Trump. And
Right.
we're just going to pray that the election is not going to be stolen.
Yeah.
Even if God has to help it happen supernaturally. And so I'm thinking it'll be a positive.
Well, speaking of that, and I obviously the theft concerns, right? Of course, election integrity issues. There's been a lot of things that have been happening that have been pretty positive. I mean, you just had the Supreme Court yesterday in a 5-4 decision. Of course, Amy Coney Barrett sided with the left, but they stopped illegal aliens from being able to register to vote in the election here in Arizona. That's huge. Okay. Glenn Youngkin in Virginia a couple of weeks back said illegals will not be voting in this election. We're gonna clean it up, clean up the voter rolls. In Michigan, there was a court decision. A judge told Nessel and Benson, the Secretary of State, you can't just assume that the signatures were meant to be what they were. They have to absolutely match the signature card and the ballot. And so there's no more vagueness in that as well. And then in Pennsylvania, the exact same thing. They had a situation where they literally ruled that if the ballot envelope and the ballot are separated, then you can't count that ballot. So there are certain things, and of course, Georgia, right? Kemp just, the Georgia Assembly just completely demolished the ability to be able to steal in Georgia too. So Michigan is still an issue because of the Secretary of State and because of the governor and things like that. Wisconsin is a tough state regardless, because they have some of the toughest rules on mail-in ballots and ballot harvesting and things like that. And so I think if you put all that together, a lot of the things that we suffered from are eliminated, or at least they're eliminated from the court standpoint. What if they are eliminated from the courts, but yet these people just ignore the courts and just continue to do what they did in 2020? I'm not sure that's going to be the case. I'm cautiously optimistic that things are going to be a lot different this time. But again, I guess time will tell because we don't 100% know what this endorsement is going to do. I'm hoping it's going to give Trump 5 to 6 percentage points, which is probably the 5 or 6 percentage points that he'll need to compensate for some of the, you know, the fraud that obviously they're going to try to do. So I don't know. We'll have to see what happens on that. But let's go through some other stuff here. There's a lot going on. There's let's see, where is it? So you have that Democrat. Remember that crazy Democrat that dressed up in like a Chinese like hat and like was covered his face and went and stabbed that journalist in Nevada?
Oh my God.
This was a while ago. So he's now on trial for murder, and he's saying that he's being framed by his real estate company. Whatever that's all about. I don't know. Crazy. Chick-fil-A is going to launch its own streaming service. That's right, Chick-fil-A. That's a little interesting. They're going to challenge the woke platforms with a family-friendly content. So it's almost like Chick-fil-A is going to be doing Chick-fil-A TV. That's kind of interesting, right? Never really thought about that, but you never know who gets involved in these types of things. So, all right. The Secret Service was finally reprimanded, but there's so much more information coming out now that Secret Service headquarters ordered agents not to request additional manpower for the Trump rally when he was almost assassinated. They actually demanded no extra security. What does that tell you? Right?
They're behind it.
Exactly. That's exactly what it tells you. It's just, and then they never picked up their radios, which they were supposed to do. Imagine that. You're supposed to use radios, right? Radio communication, and they were using text messages. Like, what? Are you kidding me? And then they're going to come out and say that this was a one-person shooter. It's just crazy. The other thing that's happening is I think Act Blue is going to have some serious issues pretty quick because the Texas Attorney General is going after Act Blue. You now have OMG and James O'Keefe dressed up as like, he almost looked like a Kamala Harris pimp, basically. I don't know if you had a chance to see that. And he infiltrated the DNC and he got them on recording and things like that. So you have that investigation going on. And now you have you have Virginia jumping in on Act Blue as well, right? Mayorez, I think his name is the Attorney General. So I'm hearing Louisiana and Missouri could also be jumping onto that as well. So I think Act Blue is going to have the blues pretty soon because of their money laundering and the money laundering operations. So you have Jackoff Smith is said to be, quote, carefully revising his January 6th case against President Trump after the Supreme Court's presidential immunity ruling. They just will not leave this guy alone. It's just unreal. So, but all right. So we know that these polls are fake, right? Now we have the RFK endorsement. We saw the disaster, which is exactly what it was. And they're trying to say that somehow Tim Walz was like the greatest speech they've ever heard. I mean, the amount of bullshit that they are spewing is just unbelievable. It really, truly is. So, all right. Let's see, what else do we got here? So I talked about earlier that campaign to go after the autopsy to be released. So they're getting pressure on that. Definitely, they're pushing back, but there's definitely a pressure campaign, not just from me, but also from journalists and things like that as well. So let's see, 7:30. So I came from the Trump rally. I raced over to get here in time, so I didn't get a chance to kind of go through and do all the different things in here. So I was just kind of flying by the seat of my pants as I typically do. So let's see here. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So he's basically saying that he's keeping the White House bid open, but he removed his name from 10 battleground states. So I don't know, kind of crazy. All right, so let's talk about this. What was the craziest thing that we saw from the DNC convention in the last week or so? Let's start. We'll start with you, Carol. We'll go the opposite direction.
I just can't waste my time to watch that at all.
Oh no, I'm not saying to watch it, but just hearing, just the hearing.
I was gonna say, like, I mean, just like scanning through like YouTube or whatever, or just trying to, all of a say, I mean, I would just hear stuff like, oh, so and so's passionate speech, and it's just weird because when the RNC was going on, like the headline, when you're scrolling through YouTube, it would just be like, oh, the convention, oh, Trump did, oh, this. But the DNC, it's like, what a passionate speech from so-and-so and how fired up. So everything, I just noticed all the headlines it was all positive, positive, positive. So, I mean, it's like you said it a couple weeks ago. There's a bunch of stupid people in America.
There's a lot of stupid.
That's the only thing that's going on. What else can you say? You said it. It's sad.
Yeah, exactly. It is sad. And it's amazing that with all these people that are suffering, right, from high rents to inflation to gas prices to food, everything is so much more. You would think that they would blame the people that are in control right now. And then for them to run around saying, we're going to do this and we're going to do that, just like Trump said tonight at the rally, he's like, all you have to do is leave the convention, go back to Washington, and in 1 second say, that's it, we're closing the borders. But of course they're not going to do that, right? I mean, why would they? Because they're trying to replace the minorities, in particular black voters that they've lost, and they want to bring in these illegals. But the good part is that we're fighting back and we're being proactive. We're not being reactive this time. And I think that's a huge difference. And I hope it's enough, to be honest. But with all the lawsuits that the RNC is filing, everything that's been going on, Charlie made a perfect point tonight. Tonight at the Trump rally. He spoke tonight, and he said, there's probably 18,000 to 20,000 people right now in this arena, and he said, if each one of you chases 10 ballots, that's 200,000 plus ballots in Arizona, is obviously because we're in Arizona. He's like, that's enough to win the entire state. And he said, if you duplicate that in Pennsylvania, in Wisconsin, in Michigan, in Nevada, and so on and so forth, we have the numbers. That's the thing. We just have to be civically engaged in the process. We have to understand that this is, as we always hear, right, the most important election of our lifetime. It is, because it could be the last. That's the scary part. It could be the last. So some of the crazy things that we've heard were obviously the bus that was coming in, to give, they did 25, is it 25? 25 chemical abortions. 25 unborn children lost their lives at the DNC. Let that sink in for a second. 25 babies were not allowed to be born, and they're celebrating it. They are a culture of death. They truly are. And then, of course, there was, I think, 8 men got vasectomies from what I heard. So how insane is that? Right? It's so crazy. Then there was a recording of one of the speakers off mic, and they said something like, all we have to do is act kind of normal for like the next 2 months, and then after that we can act crazy again. They actually said that. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, this isn't even about politics. It's not even about right versus left. It's about survival versus tyranny, at this point. So Does anybody have anything that they want to bring up that maybe I haven't talked about yet? And
Well, I do one thing from the convention that's kind of a minor thing. I think it was a second night, and they had Kamala and her husband out, and they were referring to him as the second gentleman. You know how they introduce her as president, even though she's not president, but they'd say, "Here's President, Kamala, and the second gentleman."
the second gentleman. Well, I guess because she was VP and she's female, from what we can tell, and her husband, I guess, is male, so he would be the second gentleman rather than, I don't know, how would that work? Because what would let's say the vice president was a male, what would the wife be called? It wouldn't be first lady, second lady?
Yeah.
Second lady.
Lady.
So it'd be second lady, and he's a deballed, whatever you want to call him, first or second gentleman. If you look at who's voting for Kamala and all that, it is deballed, feminized, whatever, gay, trans, bi, whatever the hell they are, men. They're no balls men with no testosterone, nothing like that. They're just a bunch of snowflake pussies. I'll say it. And that's who wants to support. That's who they, wants to support. You've got your hand up, Carl. Is your mic on? Is the question.
Yeah, my mic is on.
Okay, good. Go for it, buddy.
We
What did you
saw
wanna
a
ask me?
video of I don't remember who it was, but it showed Vivek Ramaswamy or Ramadam Ding Dong, or what you call it.
Whoever.
He was he was at the DNC, and there were a bunch of them, those crazy Palestine protesters. They wouldn't let him in there.
Yes, I do remember that. Yeah, okay, we got that there. I do remember that. Yeah, as a matter of fact, he was talking to him, and some guy got in his face, and he goes, "Do you support Israel?" And Vivek was like, "Yeah, I support Israel." He goes, "Then get out of here, get out of my face, you fascist pig," and this and that, right? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that as well. These morons that are burning the American flag and burning the Israeli flag in front of the Israeli consulate. Don't they understand that you can't do that anywhere else in the entire world? Basically, you'll be murdered for it. These people are so stupid. They're so radical. They're so brainwashed because they've been brought up on the internet. They've been brought up on, whatever, all this crazy left-wing bullshit from DEI and everything else. And so now they think somehow that they have a right and a privilege because of the First Amendment to just sit there and burn the American flag and the Israeli flag. They don't have a right to do it. Technically, they do by law, but people ought to be popping them in the mouth for doing it. And if you remember, Ben Bergquam, who, by the way, did a blurb for the book, he almost got beat up because he went to grab the American flag and the Israeli flag and rescue it. There was a video on that as well. So who else? Gail, you had your hand up? What's up?
Yeah, just one humorous note. One of Jesse Waters' reporters, he found that this woman, I don't know who she was, but he said, she was all for the Green New Deal and all that. And he asked, do you drive an electric car? And she has a Ford Bronco.
What
And he said,
what
well,
about
why does
Bronco?
she had what kind of car do you drive? She drove a Ford Bronco. He says, why do you buying that, not electric car? She couldn't give an answer.
Yeah, well, I can tell you why. Because a Ford Bronco is a better car than one of these, electric little pieces of crap. So, Pam, did you have your hand up? Or is that, no, that's me. That has the mouse on. There we go. All right. Anybody else got anything
Sure,
else?
I got about the vasectomies that they were giving away up there.
Yeah.
8 ain't
I'll
enough.
get to you, Liam, in a minute.
8 is not enough. It
Yeah.
Yes,
they should have had a line of them all
We
the
should
way
have had
around the bus.
castrations done. That would have been even better. That would have been more appropriate for sure.
You need to knock the problem out where it starts.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. What's going on, Liam? What's on your mind there, bud?
I just wanted to throw something random. I was just putting it in the Zoom chat a couple seconds ago, but let's say the election gets super close on election night, and let's say Harris has 270 and Trump has 268. But what if some faithless electors vote against Harris, and that puts her right under? Like, what do you think the left would do if faithless electors decided it in Trump's favor?
Well, I'm pretty sure that person didn't kill themselves, if you want to know
Right.
the truth, right? Almost immediately. They even tried that with President Trump, if you remember. There was a couple that refused, and then I guess they were threatened with jail or
Hmm.
something like that, and they had to come back around.
That's right.
I don't know. Here's the thing: if this is some type of 268 thing, that's not good. Okay,
No.
that's not good at all. What I was thinking about yesterday is, what if the Democrats have completely just miscalculated their support in big blue cities
Hmm.
because black voters that are suffering from these illegal aliens taking over their cities are fed up? What if, for instance, they're not polling the state of Illinois? And I know what you're thinking. Oh my God, Josh, how could they possibly win Illinois? I don't know. I'm not saying that they could or they couldn't. But what happens if that vote has, let's say, 60% in and the state's still not called? You know what that
Right.
means? That means it's going to be a really, really, really good night for President Trump. Okay. But if a blue state, real blue state, if it's called right away and there's still like 90 something percent of the vote out, then that could be a pretty rough night or a tough night for President Trump. So keep that in mind. If he's competing and it's close and they're not calling blue states fast, what do you think's happening in the Midwest? What do you think's happening in the more conservative states? Right? So you got to kind of think about that. So I'm wondering, again, that's the whole reason why, nothing against JD Vance, that's the whole reason why I wanted a black conservative. I didn't want to play small ball. I wanted to expand the map and force their resources to be allocated in other areas to protect, so that they didn't have the resources in the swing states. That was my thought and my thinking on that, but they didn't do that. So, yeah, that's the part that, because imagine that. Imagine if it was a black conservative and now all of a sudden they've got to put resources in New Jersey, and they've got to put resources in Illinois, and they've got to put resources in New York because it's, within striking distance. What do you think that means? That means they're going to leave Michigan and Pennsylvania and all the rest, right? So that's what my thought process was on
That's a
that.
good thought.
But I guess we just don't know
No.
how upset people are in the minority communities in the big cities. I guess we'll find out, but it's pretty crazy. Anybody else got anything else want to ask? Like I said, I came right from the rally, drove an hour and 5 minutes to get home as quick as I could. I walked in the door at about 6:38, and I had to be on because typically Marlene starts getting everything ready around 6:50. So I didn't really have time to do much. I'm kind of winging the whole thing. So
did you feel safe at the rally?
yeah, it was indoors. We were guests of Paul Gosar, so we didn't have to wait in line. We just kind of, it was a big line, miles and miles long. I felt so bad for those people in the hot sun. They were handing out water bottles, and actually, believe it or not, they were handing out free umbrellas to keep people out of the sun. So I thought that was really cool too. But yeah, no, we went, for the most part, we were in line about 50 minutes. So we were still out in the sun for a bit, but we got right in, and we were sitting pretty close to the floor, not right in the front, but kind of close to the floor. And yeah, it was packed, just packed. And then there was thousands outside that couldn't get in, couldn't even get in. And the thing is that they said the event started at 1:30, and so we got up at like 9:30 in the morning, and we got out there around about 11, and it was already packed. I mean, the lines were huge. People were camping out overnight to even be there. So it was pretty crazy. But Carrie Lake had literally the best line. I'm wondering if it's going to make the news. It should. She was talking about her late father, her mom, and actually it's her birthday today. She turned 55 today. So everybody wished her a happy birthday and all that. It was nice. But the funny thing was she was talking about her late father. I guess his name is Larry. He was a football coach. And she goes, my late father provided helmets and shoulder pads to his players. And she goes, Tim Walls gave out tampons and maxi pads. And it was so fun. The whole crowd just went nuts because it was just one of those like perfectly timed jokes, you know? And yeah, she was good. And Charlie Kirk was really good. He spoke, I believe he introduced Trump, or he was right before Trump. And then, like I said, when RFK Jr. came out, he spoke for about maybe 10 minutes. But when he came out, it was like everybody was just screaming for him, which is good because, you know, we don't want to alienate them, you know, we need those people, we need those votes. So, but it was kind of funny. So, all right, anybody else? Like I said, I'm winging it tonight. Let's see what's going on Citizen. You guys ever hear of citizenfreepress.com? Great website. Kennedy's speech, his first MAGA rally. Let's see. The choice between normal and crazy. Boy, that's true. Oh, that's right. Riley Gaines. She was there. She spoke too. She goes, I'm not voting. She goes, I'm voting for Trump because I am a woman, is what she said, to thunderous applause. So I don't know why Trump would say I still have great confidence in the Secret Service when they're trying to kill him, but he said that. Trump won't say what role he has planned for Kennedy. Let's talk about that real quick before we wrap up, because I think it's almost like 7:55. So a lot of people are talking about him for Attorney General, maybe a position at the National Institute of Health or NIAID, Health and Human Services, and then I've heard a couple of others. But at the end, I'll tell you what I think his best position would be. But let's start with you, Glenn. What do you think, assuming, and again, we don't want to go too crazy here, but assuming Trump wins, what would be a good position in the Trump cabinet for RFK Jr.?
I made a comment on your video. Well, I watch them the day after you post them, but the one from last night, you said about him being in CIA.
Yeah,
I'd love to see that, and then just love
exactly.
to see him clean
You
house.
spilled my beans already. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's fine. A lot of people want him to be in these different positions, but what would be the best revenge against his uncle's murder from the CIA and his father's murder, likely from the CIA as well? CIA director.
Yeah.
Could you imagine if RFK Jr. was appointed the CIA director and was able to dismantle the deep state from the inside out? That would be an incredible position. Perhaps maybe the director of national intelligence, DNI, as well. That would work. But a lot of people want attorney general. You know, they want health and human services. They want NIAID or NIH. All of those positions, they have to go through a Senate confirmation. The only one that doesn't is the CIA director, believe it or not. So he could just be appointed like that. They can't stop him. Where they could try to filibuster him to be the attorney general or any of these other, positions. So other than the one that I think he would be best for, what about you, Carl? What do you think you would want to see him as?
I say, CIA, is that what the CIA is that?
Mm-hmm.
He could get Christopher Wray out of the way.
Well, I'm sure he'll be fired literally day one, obviously.
Yeah.
So, Pam, what about you?
Kennedy should take Fauci's old job.
At NIH.
Fall
or
asleep.
NIAID actually. It's actually NIAID. You know why I know that so well? Because when I was writing the book in that chapter on, I think it's chapter 7, all about, the cover up and COVID and all that. A lot of times I would say NIH, and Hector would correct me. He'd go, "Well, I did some research. It's actually NIAID, which is part of NIH." And so I had to get it all right. I had to change. Okay, I'm sorry. So that's how come I know. Because when you write a book, it has to go through legal at the end. They've got to verify everything to make sure that they're not going to be sued or anything for anything that an author puts in there. So, I mean, if you write a book on your own without a publishing company, then you're liable. You know what I mean? But if you write for a publishing company, they're liable. I mean, you are too, but to an extent, but it's really them. So they really make sure that everything goes through legal. Like there's this one section where I actually argued for it, but this one section where I wanted to put all of the emails from the scientific community in the book, not just in the sources, in the actual book. I wanted them to see the emails to Dr. Fauci from all these people. And so I got a little bit of pushback saying, I don't know, you can't have their emails like that. And I said, well, wait a minute. These emails were gotten through a Freedom of Information Act request. So what does that mean? That means that they're already public record. So I said, see if they can go to legal with that. And a couple days later, yeah, you're right, Josh, no problem. So I have their emails right in that chapter. Everyone can read them. Everyone can see them. I've got FBI agents' emails, CIA agent emails right there, right in the book where everyone can see them and stuff too. So, but remember, I'm not doxing anyone because they were part of a Freedom of Information Act request that was put out publicly. So you can take something that's public and put it anywhere you want. It's not a big deal. So I argued for that and I won. So I thought that was kind of cool. Okay, so let's see. Gail, what about you? What do you think would be a good position for RFK Jr.?
Well, you mentioned the two, either the NIAID or the CIA. It would probably be the best one, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like him in Attorney General. He needs somebody that will really go.
I'd
I
love
don't
to see
know.
Ken Paxton as the Attorney General. I think he'd be
Yeah.
hands
I don't know.
down
Giuliani
the
should be
best.
in there somewhere. I don't know. But
Giuliani, yeah, I mean, he took down the mob, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and he's a lifelong friend of Trump, and they went after him too. So
he's
there could be
loyal.
some
Yeah.
revenge there too. Mike Davis comes to mind as well.
Mhm.
He's a lawyer that clerked for Gorsuch. He's been very, very conservative. He's called out a lot of these, lawsuits that they're garbage, they're bullshit, and all that. So he might be somebody. Judge Jeanine Pirro, imagine her as Attorney General. She'd
Oh,
be
yeah.
ripping. She'd be
Oh,
ripping some
yeah.
heads off right there too. So, what about you, Liam? What do you think would be a good position for RFK Jr.?
Good position for RFK Jr. First of all, I'm not a fan of the bureaucracy. I think it should all be dismantled. But leaving that aside, if we have to pick a position, I'd say on the medical side. I mean, he's got his iffy views and all, but we see, what he's done with the medical side of things, and it's like, I think it's something all Americans can unite upon. It's not just a partisan thing. So I'd say that the CIA would be interesting, but
Yeah. Well, the CIA would be interesting because of what happened to his uncle and his
right.
father, but yeah, or even Surgeon General. I mean, he's been at the forefront of fighting against not just vaccines, but also fighting against, the poisoning of our food supply, water, the environment. And he's a liberal, he's an environmentalist as well, but he understands what's at stake. And I
Yep.
truly believe that he's someone that loves the country, obviously. And he's an old school, I mean, Kennedy, technically, right? He's a Kennedy Democrat. So he's like an old school, more conservative America first. That's why the whole America first thing kind of works for him. I just wonder if he's going to lose his wife over this endorsement, because Cheryl is pretty, she's pretty liberal, let me tell you. I mean, she was on Curb Your Enthusiasm and all that. So I'm sure all of her friends are going, what the hell is Bobby doing? Freaking out. I could see Meathead and Larry David freaking out and everything else. But hey, you know what? He's doing what he needs to do for the country, and I give him a lot of credit for that. What about you, Carol?
I like the idea of the CIA, so that's
CIA.
perfect. Perfect,
Yeah, I
perfect.
agree. I agree. I think that would be the absolute best position for him to be in. So, all right. So I'm gonna wrap it up. It's around 8 o'clock. If you want to stay on with me a little bit more, that's fine. But I do have to do an interview at 8:30 my time. So those are all my thoughts for the evening. Can't wait to hear all of yours, and we'll see you on the next one. So go ahead, Marlene.
Good night.